So just as I have on the screen, asking for to join me in a bracha for Chaim Yisrael Ben Bluma, for Shlomo Krevod, my nephew, for Shlomo.
Please stop sharing.
Okay. So thank you. Someone asked about the name Bluma. So in Russian, there is this way of pronouncing words with a l. That's why it's spelled here as Bluma. That's the explanation. Okay, so let's start with our shir. So the first thing I want to share with you is someone asked me already last Motzei Shabbos. He asks me the brothers of Yosef. So this is before Yosef has revealed himself to them. He says, if you are honest, if you are, one of your brothers should stay behind, and all of you will go back to Canaan and bring food for the family. And then he says, and you'll bring back your younger brother Binyamin, and that will show that you are honest. And you won't die out of famine, etc. And they did so. And then they said, and then they started kind of saying to one another, we are guilty for having sold our brother, etc. So he asked me very simple, what did they do then? At that moment, they had been told that they have to go back to Canaan and leave their brother, one of them, behind. What did they do then? So there's a couple of pirushim, but one of them is the Rabbeinu Bechaya, which you have at the bottom of the screen, and that is, he says, what did they do when they heard that one of them has to remain as a hostage? Shekulam mosu es atzmon v'omru loi hinenu kulonu lefonecho kach mishatirtze. Each of them offered themselves as the hostage. Lepoya later he took Shimon, but Vayasuchein is you want to take someone as a hostage, so each one of them offered to be that hostage. So that's Rabbeinu Bechaya. I want to share with you another very important message, and since I have the forum, I have the duty to talk about it, and that is about the union of safety. I spoke about this in Shul today in one minyan. We have 2 minyanim, Baruch Hashem. Part of it is also for safety, that there's space for everyone, healthy spacing. So I had a call from a doctor who is part of Public Health England. He called me on Monday and he asked me to alert the Olam, to alert the Kehillah to be vigilant because of this new strain of the virus, Rahman al-Islam. And he says, just like people were vigilant at the beginning by the pandemic in March, and so absolutely the same degree of caution is needed now. And I may say, well, let me just share with you this Devar Torah first, and then I'll just add another comment. So here is a Gemara. We're learning Eruvin, and although there's generally the Eruvin is such a complicated Masechta, which is true to a degree, but there's a lot of beautiful Haggadah in Eruvin. And here, this is in the end of the first Perek. So it talks here, just comes in there, as Gemara often is a bit unpredictable what it's going to come up with. So it talks there about Mayim Achronim. It's got to do with Netilas Yadayim and Eruv are both Takonos Shlomo HaMelech. And he says about that people who are on a campaign, a military campaign, don't have to do Netilas Yadayim. L'shono ela Mayim Rishonim, that the exemption is for Mayim Rishonim, which is Netilas Yadayim. But Mayim Achronim Choiva, but the water before benching. Omar Rav Chia bar Ashi, mipnei ma omru Mayim Achronim Choiva. Why did the Chachamim say that there's a duty to have Mayim Achronim? So he says, mipnei shemelach Sodom is yesh. There's a kind of salt which is salt of Sodom, shemesame soinayim, and if it gets into the eye, it will cause blindness, Rahman al-Islam. Okay, so this is very familiar. And then there are those who say that nowadays it's not, it's so obsolete, this it's so rare, one doesn't have to worry about it. So there are poskim who are are not so insistent about it, Mayim Achronim, but generally we are particular. But then what is the proportion of this salt in Omar Abaye umishtakecho kekurto bekura? The proportion, the ratio is, in one kur you'll have a koiret, which means like a crumb. I don't have the exact measurement of a koiret, but it's a tiny particle in a kur. So to get the numbers, I tried to work out. As I say, I don't know how big a koiret is, but I googled how many drops are there in a liter. So the ratio is that there's 20 drops to a milliliter. 1 mil is 20 drops. So now that gave me the following cheshbon. A kur is 30 sa'ah. 30 sa'ah equals 543 liter approximately. Then take that and multiply it by 20,000. Yeah, 20 milliliters. 20 drops to a milliliter, that means 20,000 into a liter, yeah? So that brought me to a cheshbon of over 10 million. So in one kur, there's one out of 10 million or less, which is this harmful salt, which can cause blindness. And for this, Chacham instituted Mayim Achronim, and the consequences are bad, is being blind, but it's not, as you say, totally lethal. And still they have that takon. And so just to bring across the point of how cautious one has to be when there are the lurking presences of something which is a dangerous component. So just to encourage everyone to take proper precautions. Certainly, I think the hygiene, but the distancing is important. Masks are important, and I mentioned also in the shul that there's a quote in the Mishnah Brura about wearing a mask. The Mishnah Brura quotes this from the Pischei Olam, which was written by Rav Dov Bekarasik. The Pischei Olam is quoting this from Divrei Nehemiah, Nehemiah de Brovin, who was a colleague of the Tzemach Tzedek, and Divrei Nehemiah is actually quoting the Tzemach Tzedek. So the one who's actually talks about this quote in the Mishnah Brura, unwittingly perhaps, is actually a word from the Tzemach Tzedek about, it was talking about some kind of epidemic at the time, and wearing a mask, and he says putting some kind of camphor, which means mint, inside. So I just want to encourage everyone in each place, and the point which I want to add is the following. Perhaps the Hamish community, in a way, is a bit insular, and therefore has perhaps a certain degree of comfort that they're not coming into contact with the broader community. That's not totally true. And I want to say the other side of it, the flip side of that cheshbon is, if chas v'sholem, one person brings it, if the Hamish community are not going to take proper precautions, the distancing, etc., the how do you say, the close-knit nature of the Hamish community is so much more, so much more potent in chas v'sholem in spreading this. And therefore, b'chol loshen shebakosha, to be careful and to protect ourselves and to protect the people around us. And the Eibishter shall help that we should weather this in good health and be able to come back to Yom Ketikunom, to be able to come to shuls in a normal way and to have moistus, etc., to function in a normal way. And of course, the biggest Yeshua is Mashiach Tzidkenu, but as I say, in Russian they used to have on Yiddish, till you get to the pub, you also need a drink till you get to the pub. So we soll sein gesund and look after ourselves and look after our environment and in good health. Now, someone asked me the following. It was last Sunday. He asked me, when we put on the talus. So we put on the talus, and we first say some psukim borchi nafshi, and then we put on the talus, and then we say Mayoko. The late Rabbi Sion alav shalom told me that in Ger they had a seder that the unmarrieds were not allowed into some kind of tish because of the Rebbe's health at the time. So when they come in, you don't know. Some bochurim wanted to be by the tish, and they would put in a spodik, and no one would know the difference of so many people. So there was a Rebbetzin. One of the Rebbetzin says, "Zug Mayoko." Can you say Mayoko balpeh? If he was married, so he's used to wearing a talus, he can say but Mayoko balpeh. If he was a bocher, he would start stammering, stuttering. At any rate, so we say Mayoko right after we put on the talus. Okay. So he's asking why, when we do atifa, we make a point of having the atifa for kedei hilok daled ames, which is a few seconds. Why do we say the psukim right away? Why shouldn't we wait? Isn't he worried? Shouldn't we be worried about a hefsek? So the ones that cut two answers. Number one is that the psukim are not a hefsek because they are being said about the talus. It's not you're not talking about the results of Chelsea beat Arsenal or something like that. It's got to do with what we're talking about the talus. But besides that, another Yesoidus Dike inyan here. That's what I brought here from the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, Goren Hilchos Pesach. So we have here about B'dikas Chometz. And he says, if you talk before B'dikas Chometz, you made the bracha, before starting the actual B'dika, then you have a problem of hefsek. But if you have already started B'dika and you interrupt, then it's not a problem of hefsek. The simplest example, which comes up later, have you ever heard of someone not speaking in the sukkah because if it's a hefsek between the bracha and sitting in the sukkah? Not an issue. It's like the parallel would be you made a bracha on an apple, you've taken your first bite, and then you're still eating the apple. It's not a problem. Once you're in the middle of the session or what you're doing, it's not a problem of hefsek. So there we have over here these words. Once you are already in the session, then that's not a problem of hefsek. And he has this line: once you are already in the middle of doing the mitzvah, so then talking is not a hefsek. It's between the bracha and the fulfillment of the mitzvah. That's the crucial, moment where you should not be mafsik. But once you already got that talus around you, you're doing the mitzvah. So it's not such a problem if you would speak about something, even if it was unrelated. Lepoil the Sif continues that we don't talk whilst we're doing the b'dikas chametz. We have tried to avoid unless it's related to the b'dika, like bring the vacuum cleaner or something like that. And that's because there are those who disagree with this rule. But I think that's enough for our topic at the moment. That the issue, once you're wearing that talus, even less than dal damas, you're already doing the mitzvah. And so therefore there's not a problem of hefsek over there. I'm just going to go now to the few points brought up in the chat. Someone's asking, Mayim achroinim, halacha or al pi kabbalah, the all poskim agree. As I said, that some poskim say that nowadays melech's doimis is obsolete, and therefore they hold that we don't have to do mayim achroinim. That's possibly also the reason why the noshim are not so particular with mayim achroinim. Generally, I don't see women being makpid. Part of it may be because it's not a chiyuv according to everyone. Let's move on. Someone is saying that this Mayoko trick was done by the Rebbetzin, by the Frierdiker Rebbe. Okay, thank you. I hear it. I see two of you have written. Thank you for that addition. Okay, I'd heard it from a different source, but thank you. Almog is Milsa al Bishayu Yakida. It's always a word about Rabbi Seinu Nesienu is allemaal atayr de zach. Let me go weiter. Now, earlier in the week, someone asked me about Tvilas Kalim on a coffee maker. So life is getting complicated. A cup of coffee is a ganze machine. So is asking, so what the way you have here a glass, and then inside the machine, apparently there is a kind of a metal filter where you put the granules, and then there's also the aspect where it boils the water. So in a sense, there's a kettle inside this contraption, and then the water trickles through the filter into this jug. So the jug is high b'tvilah, there's no question about that. It's as I mentioned before, Tvilas Kalim for glassware is drabonon, otu kli matches. The metal filter also requires Tvilah. So as when the person asked me, I said he doesn't need to tovel the whole machine. And then I started thinking about it. I thought, I have to discuss this and look into it and perhaps discuss it on Motzei Shabbos. Actually, the machine also theoretically would require Tvilah. The thing is that this kind of machine, as I look at it, it's not going to survive a mikveh. I can see here there's a little silicon chip, which over here, and any drop of water inside that is going to be, you can say Kaddish. So as a result, we've got here, it's a typical example of those types of utensils which cannot be toveled. And so we discussed this not so long ago. If you are in a situation where you have a new keli and you cannot tovel it because there's no mikveh available, so there is a eitzah, there is advice, there's a solution to give it to a goy b'matana and then borrow it back. And what I mean by giving it to a goy b'matana, I mean kipshute. You give it, hand it over, the goy lifts it up and is koine, whether or some physical kinyan, not just in mind or with the misha beirach. You actually hand it over to the goy to be koine. Now, generally, that advice is only allowed for up till Shloshim Yom. There's such an idea is mentioned, but looking at it more carefully on my notes, I've given a reference in note 3. I've given a reference to Stei HaShlichus Chelik Gimel, where I have there a note b'shem Rabbi Gedalia Lieberman, and he duly convinced me that the solution of giving it b'matana to a goy is acceptable even long term in the event of a machine which has no other solution. So if there's no eitzah, of course, there's another solution of starting to take it apart and putting it back together again. If you are such a cheverman, do that. But if you don't have those skills, so then you can rely upon that shitta, and that solution of giving the housing, this whole big contraption, giving it to go b'matona and borrowing it back long term. That's the best you can do in this instance. Someone's asking about what about an electric meat slicer for kashering and tvilah. The meat slice is a blade. There's of course a motor. There's a blade. It may. I would imagine it's sometimes used for cutting hot meat, and therefore it needs to be kashered. But it should be kasherable in boiling water. I don't see why not. I mean, if you start saying because it's, I think it to be that would be okay. I don't think it needs to have dafka blowtorch, and then, but yes, the blades should be toveled. The machine, the housing which has the motor, I don't think that needs to be toveled. The difference is with this kettle, why is it worse? Is because it actually boils the water. The water is going through pipes inside that machine, so it's basically a kettle. And so that's why I have a problem there, and it does need to have tevila. And I then looked up in various contemporaries for him, and they see that the the contemporary poskim do say it needs to have tefillah. One of the Sforim I came across is a sefer called Chut Shoni or Chut HaShoni from the later Nissim Karelitz. He has a section on Tevilas Kalim, and he says that these need tefillah. Okay. So Rabbi Rose is asking what constitutes taking it apart. It needs to be not. You don't have to take it totally apart to into separate bones and whatever, a whole skeleton in little bones. It has to be enough that it should not be able to function, and not the electrics. I'm talking about the mechanics. I'm talking about the water container, etc. So let's say if it were a simpler, like an urn. So if you'd dismantled the spout and then reconnected the spout, that would be enough to make it Kli Shenas Al Yedei Yisrael. But so I don't know. I've never owned one of these machines, and I'm not interested to have one of them. So I haven't really taken them apart myself. But so I don't know exactly how to advise you. But you'd have to take something apart which it's mechanically not working, not just the electricity is not working. Okay, I'm not sure how this comes in. Someone's asking, what bracha do you make on the oats cooked instantly? That's going to, well, so that will come on to point 6. I guess you're going ahead. Okay, let's go on to the next point, and that's about Kriyas HaTorah. So here, it's one of our listeners, one of our very, very regular listeners, asked me at the beginning of the week, there's the following shaila, and I don't have an answer to his shaila. And I thought about it. I thought that the following: if I don't have the answers to the shaila, that doesn't mean I shouldn't share it, because perhaps one of the people who are listening, presently or later, might have an answer, and then I'll be able to get an answer. So not knowing the answer is not an excuse for not putting it on the list. So the question was the following: does the Bal Koire have a chelik, a share in the benefit of the one who has the aliyah? The question was a practical one. He had gone to a bismedrash, and as you know, the Poiler Shabbat Midrashim, they sell the mitzvahs. So he bought the mitzvahs. It was the last day of Chanukah, Zois Chanukah. Zois Chanukah is apparently the Poiler Shabbat Midrashim sells for a lot of money. Zois Chanukah, a very special day. It was a later minion, so it was a bit cheaper. So he bought it, and he gave the aliyah of Zois Chanukah, Shlishi, he gave it to his son. So his son said, Tati, why didn't you keep the aliyah for yourself? Such a choshev aliyah, why didn't you keep it for yourself? The father was the Bal Koire. So he's asking, perhaps as Bal Koire, he has the privilege of the aliyah in any case. That's the question here. And to explain a bit more how he explained the question to me, he says like this: he had read in Chassidus that when the Koyanim give the bracha, so we have the pasuk Omer Lohem, and the seder is that the Yisrael has to prompt the Koyanim, Yavarechecho, etc. That we know, that we learn from the pasuk Omer Lohem. But then he recalls from learning in a Maimer that the Yisrael who's prompting the Koyanim, he's as if he is a conduit to give the Koyanim the ability to give the bracha. And on that basis, he wants to say, if the one who prompts the Koyanim has a chelik in the Birchas Koyanim, so the Bal Koire has a chelik in the aliyahs of the people of Oiled Torah. This was his theory, his hypothesis. So I must confess, I spent a while looking for both points. I couldn't find the point of the Omer Lohem being explained that the Yisrael has a chelik in the Birchas Koyanim. Birchas Koyanim is a gewaldige Gazach, and the Rebbe spoke about many times about Ad Mehera Yoretz Dvorei, that the Kohen gives a bracha, it kind of races through, it doesn't stop with the various obstacles and scrutinies on the way, it races all the way, it comes down. But I don't remember this, I couldn't find this word of Omer Lohem, that the Yisrael has a chelik in the Birchas Koyanim. Be that as it may, and I certainly didn't find the second point, that the Bal Koire has a chelik in the aliyah of the Bal. But meanwhile, I want to share what I did find. So a couple of points. First of all, here you have the Lavush. On the right hand of the screen, we have the Lavush, who is a little bit later than the Shulchan Aruch, and he writes the following. It's in the halachas of Kriyas HaTorah, in Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, and he says, and this is particularly relevant now with Corona, with distancing, it can be sometimes, one of our eminent Balei Kriya is a Levi. See, if you call him up for the first Aliyah, and the Gaboim are standing at a distance, could be that you have only one person standing by the bimah. And there is an emphasis that should be at least two people by the bimah. So in our shul, we have a plastic screen separating between the Oil Torah and the Bal Koireh. So here, but if the Bal Koireh is given Rishon, so then it's important that there should be another person on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the bimah, should be there also. At any rate, so let's read the halacha in the Lavush. Im shliach ritziba roitze lalos v'likres. Sorich sheyamoid acher bimkoimoi. If the Bal Koireh is having an aliyah, then you need to have another person there, in addition to the Bal Koireh. Shekashem shenitna Torah yedei sarsu. Like the Torah was given via an agent. V'hu Moshe shehoya hasarsu ben Hashem Yisrael, Hashem Yisborech, or ben Yisrael. Moshe was like the agent, bringing the Torah from the Eibeshter to Yidden. Kach onu tzrichim linoig bo al yedei sarsu. Therefore, also by Kriyas HaTorah, we're delivering the Torah to the Kohol, it should be with the presence of an agent. I'm not sure what he means by that sentence. So we have the Gabe who's dishing out the aliyahs. He is Kivyochel the owner. He has now got the prerogative to hand out the aliyahs to whom he sees fit. The Bal Koireh, he is the delivery man. He is the Moshe here. And then the one who has the aliyah, he is the Yid who's receiving the Torah. So what we've seen here, the profile of the Bal Koireh he's like the Moshe who's bringing the Torah from the Meibishton and giving it to the Yid. Okay, that's the Levush. So that's giving you a little bit of appreciation of what the Bal Koireh is doing. He is the agent delivering it on behalf of the Eibishter. On the left side of your screen is a quote from the Sefer Piskei Teshuvos, and he's addressing here the layout. Which side does the Gabba stand? We're talking about one Gabba, not one on either side. And he says, generally, the minig is that the Gabba stands to the right, next to the one who has the Aliyah Torah. And so what happens is the one who has the Aliyah, he's in the middle. There's a Gabba to the right, there's the Bal Koireh to his left, and he's in the middle. V'yesh mekoymes noyagim sheha'oila l'Torah omed l'smoila Bal Koireh. Actually, although the general minig is the Bal Koireh is on the left and the oila l'Torah is on the right, there are those who have a minig differently, that the Bal Koireh is on the right and the oila l'Torah is on the left. That's what I wanted to share with you from there. And now let's look at the note at the bottom of the page. This is a quote from the Rebbe's Rishimis, but it's also in several other Chabad sources. Now, the Alter Rebbe, he was the Bal Koireh on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and he would stand not like our minig today and the minig ha'olam. Alter Rebbe would stand to the right, and the Oila L'Torah would be to the left. The Alter Rebbe would have his talus down over his face, Lamata Miyenov. It was down lower than his eyes. So, of course, he could see the Torah, but you couldn't see the Rebbe's face, or the upper part of the Rebbe's face, because his talus was down. But when whoever had the privilege to be called up, so then the Alter Rebbe would lift up his talus to look at who's this having the aliyah, and the footnote brings that sometimes the person who had the aliyah would faint out of histrachus, out of overawe, when the Alter Rebbe would give him this look. So the only thing I can think of is I've just discussed this before. There's a tshuva that's a Tzedek, I think it's Simon Lamed Hey. Who is the Ikir by the Aliyah Torah? Is the Ikir the one who has the Aliyah, or the Ikir is actually the Balkoire? Because he's the one who's actually reading Barabim. You're saying a bracha on his reading. So who's the Mashpia and who's the Mekabel, so to speak? So with Derech Klal, we see that the one who has the Aliyah Torah, he's on the right, and the Balkoire is providing a service. Because the one who has the Aliyah can't read necessarily, so he's providing a service. By the Alter Rebbe, it was the Fakir. The Alter Rebbe was the Mashpia, and you had the privilege that you were getting an Aliyah, but the Alter Rebbe is your Balkoire. That's just a Chassidish hergish on why the Alter Rebbe did that, and if the Alter Rebbe did that, why didn't it become a minig haklal, minig Anash? The answer is the Rebbe shezach. The Rebbe stands to the right. Our Rebbe stood to the left. No, if I can, he stood to the left. He wasn't the Balkoira. Yeah. Okay, fine. Let's come back to some of those.
Our minig is that the Gabbai, going back to the Piskei Tshuva here on the left.
Yes.
Our Gabbai stands on the left.
We have two Gaboim, b'derech klal. Yeah?
One stands there for beauty. He doesn't say anything. The right.
Yes. The one
on the left,
to
the Gabbai who's giving out the Aliyahs, and then the Balkoira, and then the Oila.
All right. Okay. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Okay. So who is the Iker? Yes, Bet Hashayla, who is the Iker Gabe? All right, we're going to have to deal with that by the next committee meeting. Okay. Let's take a look at.
Can I ask on this point as well? It's only Azaf here. If you have this COVID situation, so you have someone, you have the I suppose in the beginning, the first Aliyah, the Gabbai will stand to the right hand side, and the person who has the Aliyah will stand on the right of the Balkoira. There's nobody on the left.
What I would say is, and when this whole COVID parsha started, I took I was following that it's enough that there's two. Although here there seems to be a preference to Chatchila with three, but I would say that the Gabe as the number three could stand at a little bit of a distance, because we only have what. Otherwise, you're going to have two screens, yeah, for safety reasons. So the third one, whether he's standing to the left or to the right, he could just stand at a little bit of a distance. That's what I would say.
Yeah, okay. I'm not talking about the distance, but I'm talking about where the position of the Gabbai should be. So you have only one Gabbai and the person who has the Aliyah.
Yeah, it's. I think it's not so important. I would say l'chayre it should be to the right. As a norm, as we see here, the minimum gabash is on the right. Yeah.
Okay. Now, by the second Aliyah, you have the person who has the Aliyah.
Rabbi, let's talk about it later, because I hadn't prepared for this Shaila, and ich will nicht sagen von Narishkeit. Später darf man geraten haben. Right, let's go on. Someone is pointing out that the Rambam writes the Makri only starts the second word. The Yevarechecho is not said. That's, I think, mentioned in Gemara already. That there's two shittas whether the Makri starts from Yevarechecho or it starts from the second word. Okay, let's move on. Can a boy not yet by mitzvah be counted as a person standing at the bima, especially in COVID times? I think that would be okay. You're talking because he's part of a bubble. I think you could be mekel. Bichlal, we're talking about minhagim. We're not talking about halacha, and therefore, in this matzav, I think we should be, be mekel on these inyanim. If we can make it safer, that's what we should be doing. So now someone's pointing out that it looks like the Balkoira is reading on behalf of the Oiler. I said, well, that's. So of course the Balkoira gets a chelik. No question about that. All right, fine. Laten we gaan weiter. Laten we gaan weiter. Okay, so now here's a practical shaila. One of our regulars. He's teaching in another school, not a non-Chabad school, and one of the malamdim there noticed that the Lubavitcher boys who are in that school have their these large tefillin. And he observed that there's a problem of the tefillin being not in the right place. So let's go through this carefully. The place for the tefillin is on the shalyad. The place for the tefillin shalyad is on the kiboires, is on the bulge of the upper arm. That's where the tefillin should be. And that's certainly true. To have the tefillin, if I don't know whether I can see, be seen on the screen, but if you have your tefillin all the way down, your tefillin is all the way next to your elbow, in the inside of your elbow, then your tefillin are too low. And the poskim talk about people not lifting their sleeves high enough, and therefore the tefillin shalyad is not high enough. It has to be on the bulge of the thing. Now, the reason why we in Chabad have the large tefillin, that's because of the Sheldorosh. The Sheldorosh, we have it's mentioned in Tanya, I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, of etzba'ayim, and that's the space on the head of the Kohen Gadol, between the tzitz on the forehead and the mitznefes. So it says in the Gemara there was a space there for his tefillin Sheldorosh. Kohen Gadol didn't wear shalyad because of chatzitza. At any rate, so that's where we get the shear of etzba'ayim. But that shear is a shear in the Sheldorosh. It's not a shear in the shalyad. So theoretically, you could have a large Sheldorosh and a small shalyad, and that would be okay. The poil, for whatever reason, the way it's evolved, people have the shalyad and Sheldorosh the same size. For most of us, it's not a problem. For most of us, it's not a problem because, and so I want to answer to this critic, etc. And Mr. Brewer has an issue about it. Mokim yesh berosh lishnei tefillin. There's space upon the head to have two tefillin, as Gemara in Eruvin. You can have two tefillin, one above the other. As you ever seen some Sephardic Yidden who wear two tefillin at the same time, they have two tefillin, one above the other. It means also by the shalyad. There's space in the shalyad, on the arm, on the kibbutz, there's enough space for two small tefillin. Of course, I believe, I was once when I mentioned today by the Fabrengen how I used to go to Rabbi Samson to see how my tefillin were getting on when my rabbinic towns were being manufactured. He once showed me tefillin of the Short Rebbe. They were very large. It was a Sheldorosh. It was closer to 6 centimeters. That's how wide it was. So possibly when the Mr. Brewer is having an issue about large shalyad tefillin, he may be talking about what we'd say today supersize, which we don't see. At any rate, if you're talking about a bar mitzvah boy who is and a small, sometimes bar mitzvah boys already, you can see they're already growing. Sometimes they're very small, then there could be an issue that if it's such a small boy that his shalyad is coming all the way down till the inside of his elbow, that is an issue. But overall, it's not such an issue. And so if one sees that there is a young boy who's got a very small arm, then one should look for eitzah to make sure that his tefillin, the main body of the shalyad, should be on the bulge of the arm. Mr. Brewer has a discussion whether the strap, whether the tunnel, called the mavarta, whether that also has to be became. He's not noted it has to be. Okay, that perhaps we can look at it more carefully. But as I say, the derech klal, it's not a problem, unless you're talking about someone who's actually exceptionally small. Let's take a look at the notes which we have over here. Would there be any difference if the person having the aliyah is at a place in davening where he shouldn't be reading along with the balkoire? He still says a bracha. If you are middle of Shema, Birchas Krishma, and you're called up, you go and you make a bracha, that we learn from the Mishnah. If you are interrupting mipnei hakoved, mipnei hayira, so if you're called up to the Torah, you go up, unless you're in Mishnah Esra. But I don't think it makes any difference. Lemaisa, you're making a bracha, and it looks like the way Tzemach Tzedek seems to be more inclined. When you have an aliyah, you're making a bracha on his reading, because you're reading, no one can hear you, even if you are saying the word quietly, but you're not reading barabim. So that seems to be more the weight that way, that you're making a bracha on the. So really, in a sense, it's the balkoyer who's having 3 aliyahs or 7 aliyahs, and everyone's generously giving him a bracha on his behalf. Let's go a little bit more in your notes here. Someone is saying here that he believes that Rabbi Azdober gave his children small shalyad until they were older. Okay, so he assessed the situation and he had the opportunity to deal with it. Fine. So fine. So I say, if there is such a situation, one has to be aware of it and speak to a sofer. If we can give you, let's say, for a few months till the boy grows a bit bigger, to use a smaller smaller shalyad. Someone's asking here, in many kehillos, mispalim cover the shalyad with their jacket, which is which is difficult with very large tefillin. That's true. That's true. Last question which we have here. I've found several tefillin here in Ukraine, which people had from their great grandparents, and larger than 4x4, closer to 6x6, a beautiful ksav. That's right. The larger tefillin would be able to contain more Mehudadik parashas because it's larger. You can manage to write a lot with your larger script. Okay, and so Rabbi Yitzchak Lowenthal is saying that someone in Copenhagen had the Alter tefillin written by a sofer, the Alter Rebbe's sofer, a Bluven sofer, and they were 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters or bigger. Yes, okay, those were the large tefillin back in the day. I'm talking about 80 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. There used to be much larger tefillin than we are accustomed to today. Thank you. By the way, I don't go for the hey al hey because we're talking about centimeters. It's 5 by 5. Let's move on. Okay, now a practical question. May oat cereal be made in a kli shlishi? So there is a general principle in halacha, in Hilchos Shabbos, that kli sheni einu mevashel unless it's kale habishul. So generally kli sheni will not cook something, but if it's something which is very subtle, so then it can be cooked even in a kli sheni. For that reason, many of us will use a tea bag in a kli shlishi with the understanding that although kli sheni is not mavashul, so kli sheni is mavashul, kale habishul, although kli sheni will cook something which is easy to cook, very slight change required, but kli shlishi is already so remote. However, we have now things like oat cereal, which has been already semi-cooked, so somehow semi-conditioned with heat. That's why it's instant oats. It doesn't take as long as regular raw oats. And here I've just got a quote here from the Sefer Shabbos Halacha from Harav Forka Shalita from Yerushalayim. And he writes the following: Dvorim sheroyim bechusha misbashlim gam b'shlishi. Things which we see vividly, that they do get cooked in a kli shlishi. Kagoyim beit sochaya, a raw egg, kvaker. Kvaker is the the English word for charedi, yeah? To quake is charoda. So the English Quakers produced some cereal and it became kvaker. Okay, so instant oats. So that's what he's talking about. Also, you wouldn't be allowed to put Quaker oats, etc., in a kli shlishi. Even if in principle you do subscribe to the heter of kli shlishi, but that is would be applicable to things like tea leaves, etc., which change the color of the water, perhaps, whatever, but that we're not, be there as it may. But when it comes to things like instant oats, he takes the view that you should not be doing them even in kli shlishi. And similarly, you've got these instant soup, these soup in a cup, which in Ivrit they call them manachama for some reason. So also, I think elsewhere in his Sefer he addresses that one shouldn't be doing those things on Shabbos. So because lepoil, you see that it's changing, the heat is actually making it edible before it wasn't edible. I must confess, I've never done an experiment of putting instant oats into cold milk and to see whether it tastes any worse. Okay. So it doesn't matter whether instant oats are pre-cooked or not. Rabbi Lowenthal is pointing out they're just thinner. The poil is The bottom line is that they were not edible, and now they become edible, even in a Kli Shlishi, and that makes it into an issue. So we shouldn't be doing it on Shabbos. So have cholent instead and finished. Problem solved. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Someone asked me this week about wearing a hearing aid on Shabbos. So there's two issues here. One is about the battery switching it on, and that obviously is only allowed if you can switch it on before Shabbos. Anyone here remember Moshe Dubinsky standing by the bimah in 770 with his hearing aid? The old, going back, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, a hearing aid was a big contraption. You had something in the ear, and then you had some kind of pendant, like a battery hanging around your neck, and it was connected with wires, etc. So that's in those days. Today, the battery is inside the tiny battery inside the thing, which is inside the ear, hardly noticeable. At any rate, so here we have a quote from the Sefer Shmiras Shabbos Kol Chasa. Machshir Shmiya, hearing aid, v'chein shesel kochliari. Kochliar, I don't know how to pronounce it exactly. I'm not sure exactly what it is either. He says you are allowed to wear them on Shabbos. You have to wear them on Shabbos, and so provided that the instrument it has been activated before Shabbos. And then he says further that actually you'd be even allowed to adjust the volume whilst you're wearing it. And he's going to detail whether there's any wires, etc., inside it which are going to change color because of it. So, and he says, if you are not sure, check before Shabbos with a person who knows more about these instruments. But in principle, he says you would be allowed to, certainly he says you're allowed to wear them. Then he says about adjusting, he says it may be possible. Question. What about wearing it in a place where there's no Erev? So mutter l'tzeis b'mokem she'ein bo Erev. Mach mishmir al gufay. You would be allowed to wear a hearing aid where there's no Erev, whether it's the machshu is made of one piece or whether it's made of a couple of pieces. And then he goes on about changing the batteries. So he takes the view that you are allowed to wear a hearing aid in the street on Shabbos. And the concept here is the concept of kameya shel mumche. It's enabling you to function better. I must share with you something which I saw in Tangedach with my late father, Alav Shalom. There's a halacha that if you maim someone, you have to reimburse them. If you can make them a mum, you have to reimburse them, and there's a whole ayin tachas ayin, etc., etc. The moment it says in Gemara, if a person had a slave and you had caused the slave to lose his hearing, you have to replace the value of the slave. Once he's lost his hearing, he becomes l'chayra worthless, and you have to replace the entire value of the slave. And what I'm saying, I saw that when my father was Shalom started losing his hearing, and he found it when he was already in Konstanfeld Square, his biggest frustration was he can't hear Kriyas HaTorah. And coming to a shiur, you can't communicate, and it was very, very frustrating that you wouldn't be able to communicate. So it's so just like we understand that wearing glasses enables you to walk the streets to function normally, so being able to hear what's going on is also a similar type of machshir, enabling you to function. And that's the basis of the heter. And I must say there are those earlier, the Har Tzvi, the Pesach Frank was machmir about wearing them on Shabbos mitzad hoitzor. But the later poskim, particularly Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, you can look it up in Shmiras Shabbos Kol Chasa. But the latter day consensus is that you are allowed to wear a hearing aid in
the electric is not a problem.
So you activate the battery, you switch it on before Shabbos, and it stays on the whole of Shabbos. Nowadays the batteries have enough power to last for a Shabbos, so that would be okay.
The same apply to an electric car or electric wheelchair.
No, and I'm going to stop you there because it's another whole parsha. You're going to wheel us off to another route. But
You remember Zalman Ferrari by Fabringen?
he used to have a trumpet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you two things. One thing is that my uncle David Raskin, Allah Shalom, he used to not wear glasses in the street on Shabbos. And then one time, Fabringen, the Rebbe spoke about glasses, how they're tough to the body, and as a result, you're allowed to wear them on Shabbos. So then, from then on, he started wearing them on Shabbos. I don't know whether he was Martineder, I don't know. But then the other thing is that when I used to stand by the Fabrengens, and occasionally I would stand there with my hand cupped behind the ear, and a Chaver Mine said, Sinit Shein. It would, to stand in front of the Rebbe with your ears cupped, it would like kind of telling the Rebbe, I can't hear you properly, and asking the Rebbe to strain his voice. So I didn't do that, but Zalman used to sit behind the Rebbe, and so that wasn't an issue. He would sit there with this trumpet to be able to hear the Rebbe better. Right. I'm not going to read the whole thing about the cochlear implant. I know the words are, but I can't deal with it now. Let's move on. So, as I say, wearing a hearing aid, Lan Maise, it's okay. Someone wants to be machmer, of course, there's mokim lahachmer. But in Lan Maise, it's mutter. Let's go on. We have another mamish, a couple of minutes left. Someone asked about, I guess he didn't sleep enough hours in the night, so he was wearing rashis, and he said Vayadaber b'hoy kiviyacho, and he went into, he said what, and now he's asking, does he have to say it again in Rabbeinu Tam's? So for those who don't remember the pre-Rabbeinu Tam's days, that's his Fatov Lamed Vov. Before we started wearing Rabbeinu Tam's, we used to say at the end of Aleinu or after Tilim, we would say Vaydaber Kohev in Rashis. So if you're not wearing Rabbeinu Tam's, you said those two parashas in Rashis. Here's a very interesting thing, that in Sifrei Kabbalah, and it's brought in Poskim from Maram Pafras, Meir Pafras, he says that you should say Vaydaber B'hoy Kiviyacho first, and then Shema B'hoyim Shemoya. And you take a typical Polish Siddur, Nusach Sfard, you have Vaydaber B'hoy Kiviyacho near Adon Olam, somewhere at the beginning, because you should say Mal Seder HaParshas. And Vaydaber B'hoy Kiviyacho in Sefer Shmois, and Shema B'hoy Shemoya in Sefer Devarim. So why is it that the Chabad Minhag, it's clearly in Hayom Yom, etc., we first say Shema, and then we say Vaydaber B'hoy Kiviyacho? So I've got several reasons, but one reason which our Olam will appreciate is the following: that Shema v'hoim Shemoya, you got the tefillin is Dalad Moichin. The four compartments of the tefillin are correspond to Chochmah and Bina, and Das, which is Mischalik, and Das of Chesed, and Das, which is of Gvura. Shema v'hoim Shemoya is Shema is V'ohavto, is the Das in Shayches to Chesed. Ave and v'hoim Shemoya is Das relating to Gvura, and talking about the Onshim, etc. And then you've got the two parashas, B'cheir is Chochmah, Reishis. And then V'hoy Kiviyacha La'oretz is the Harchova of Bina. So the four parashas are Chochmah and Bina, Chesed and Gvura. Das is it's Mischal Chesed and Gvura. So the reference which I've given here on the notes to Lekutei Sichos Chelik Lametes is the following. Originally, if Moshe Rabbeinu had brought us into Eretz Yisrael, there would be a Seder Aveda of Chochmah, Bina, Chesed and Gvura. But that wasn't how it happened. The Poel Moshe Rabbeinu remained in Chutz La'aretz, and we had to go into Eretz Yisrael without him. And there we have to deal first with the Midas, with the 7 nations in Canaan, which correspond to the 7 Midas. And then Ammon and Moav and Edom, the 3 nations, Keni, Knizia, Kadmoini, which is Avodah of Moichin, is Al Totzes Moav, Al Tisgobom, etc. That's not the Avodah for now. When Moshiach comes, then we'll have to deal with, and we'll have the ability to deal with the Birurim of Moichin. So, whereas in Torah, the Seder is first Moichin and then Midas, but the Avodah Sa'odom is first we have to deal with Midas, that's Shema B'hoim Shemoya, and only then can you deal with Moichin, which is Chochmah and Bina. So that's the reason for saying first Shema B'hoim Shemoya, and then Vaydaber B'hoy Kiviyacho. And that's possibly also why you say in Rabbeinu Tam's, because Rabbeinu Tam's is going to say Shema in any case. So it doesn't make sense. You say Vaydaber Kiviyacho in Rashi's, and then you come to Rabbeinu Tam's, you're back into Midas again. So you say you finish off with Midas also in Rabbeinu Tam's, and then you say by Daboy Kiviyacho, which relates to the Avodas HaMoichin. We're running very late, so we have here a little question, which is a this is a beautiful little question. Someone's asking, he is in France, and it's Nittel Nacht. He's giving a shiur in Ukraine. In Ukraine, Nittel is a few days later. It's in December, in January, 6th of January or something. So does it Nittel go according to where the Medaber or according to the Shemaya? So I said to him, and when the Shluchim were in Morocco, Ashkenazim teaching Sfardim. So did they not observe Nittel? I'm sure they did. I'm just supposing. So it goes according to his saying Torah. The fact that the other people are in another time zone and that by them there's no issue of Nittel. So for this night, he'll get someone else to say the shiur. Someone in Ukraine will say the shiur instead of him, and let him prav Nittel, the alle feine Yidden prav Nittel. Nee, in die Kneppelagen, as I write. Oh, I must share this with you. Avremi, you'll like this one. Someone asked me a question, can you make a Fabrengen on Nittel? So I said, it's not a problem. So he says, but why did the Rebbe say that you have to sew up the buttons from the Kamachana Fabrengen? So I told him the Rebbe was talking of those people that by the Fabrengen, there's a chashash, they might say a Dvar Torah in the middle of the Fabrengen. Those who don't have that chashash, they can have a Fabrengen. But I told them, no, don't make too much of a tumult. Okay, let's two more things. One is about going to a simcha on a yard site. So here's the din of Shulchan Aruch, and that is in Ramo, in the end of Hilchos Avelos. That one about the Yesh Oimrim, that one shouldn't go to a chasana, one shouldn't go to a suda, a feast, the night where the following day is a yard site of a parent. But which kind of suda he doesn't say. But in the Pischei Tshuva, he says here, but from Kem Shmuel, that's talking about a chasana where there's the musical instruments that he calls mizmute kal chasana v'kala. But when it comes to a sudas bris, mila pidyon aben, and say if it's not such a high profile, more like a lesser event, then one would be allowed to go on the night of a chasana. Let's go on to the next point, and then we'll unmute everyone and so someone asked me, he noticed this is the last thing which I want to share with you tonight. He noticed in a Maimer in Samar Vov, he says here, you can see at the bottom of the page, that he says that in Nusach HaTfilah, we talk about various psukim, and then he quotes, and so he's asking that's a little bit different to what we have. In the Siddur we have Maritzim or Makdishim. And here the Rebbe in the Maimer says Makdishim or Maritzim. So he asked me for a little bit of input on that. So I'm happy to share this with you, that in the Nusach HaSfardim, it's Makdishim or Maritzim. Now, there's a little more background to this, and that is that in Nusach Ashkenaz, so they don't say Keser, they say only by Shabbos to Musaf, so they start Naritzach v'Nakdishach. So that which we have, Maritzim or Makdishim, and also in Nishmas, where we say the Yaritzu v'Yakdishu, they are a residue of the Nusach Ashkenaz, which has Naritzach v'Nakdishach. So although the Alter Rebbe changed by Nakdishach v'Naritzach Nusach HaSfardim, but in these two places, he didn't see it was necessary to change it over there, and he left it like the Seder Nusach Ashkenaz, which is first Maritzim or Makdishim. And I'll just share with you the last slide, and that is that we have both of these Sdorim. Have a Shoresh and Psukim. Machze Vitri says that Seder Nakdishach v'Naritzach. We have a pasuk in Yeshaya v'Hikdishu es K'des Yaakov v'Zekel Yisrael Yaritzu. So it's first Nakdishach and then Naritzach. But then we have the Mashal is quoted here that the Seder of Ashkenazim has got a Seder Keil Narot B'Seid Kedoshim Rabbo. So we have a first Naritzach and then Nakdishach. So both of them have got a Mokir, how do you say, be Horim Hagvoyim, and therefore in Naro Naro Pashte, each one. How should we say it? Advise steht in Siddur. Advise steht in Siddur, as ich darf mir sagen. So I'm going to wish you all a gute Woche, and I'm going to unmute everyone. And whoever wants to stay online, I'm going to switch off the recording. Und der, was will sagen, alle Chaim, is very welcome to join us.